This is the third Tuesday of the month Waupaca City Council meeting.
And we'll have Sandy read the clerk's open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all other meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the press in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
Thank you, Sandy, and also take roll for us.
Brian Smith.
Here.
Steve Hackett. Lori Chestnut.
Here.
Paul Hagan. Alan Keeland.
Here.
Scott Perchatsky.
Here.
Dave Peterson.
Here.
Paul Mayo.
Here.
Dimitri Martin.
Here.
Mary Fair.
Here.
And Eric Olson.
Here.
8 present. We have a quorum.
Next up is the consent agenda. This is where we take all of these items that are on the consent agenda and vote on those with one motion, unless there's a member of council or staff that would like to have one of those items pulled off and talked and voted on in a separate motion. Anybody like to see any items on the consent agenda moved?
Move to approve.
Motion by Keelan.
Second.
Second by Peterson, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Regular agenda. What you see on the agenda is the order that we're going to go in tonight. There's no additions or subtractions, so we're just looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda as printed.
So moved.
Motion by Martin.
Second.
Second by Fair. Sorry. Council approves the agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Non-agenda items and announcements. We have National Public Works Week proclamation, May 19th through the 25th. Want me to read it? Or you want to read it?
It's up to you.
Thank you. You can. Thanks.
Direct your attention to page 103 of the packet. It's National Public Works Week proclamation, May 19th through May 25th of 2019. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, streets, and highways, public buildings, and solid waste collection, and whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the effort and skill of public works officials, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff the Waupaca Public Works Department is materially influenced by the people's attitude and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. Now therefore, Brian Smith, Mayor of the City of Waupaca, Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim week of May 19 through 25, 2019 as National Public Works Week in the City of Waupaca, and call upon all citizens and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and to recognize the contributions which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Next up, we have a presentation by our new farm market manager. And Henry, you want to set this up?
Certainly. We have a new market manager this year, and it's Lindsay Pichu, not Peterzak. Pichuk. Close. Yes, please come up. She wants us to briefly tell the council and the public a little bit about the market coming up this year and some changes and things they're doing. Lindsay?
Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm Lindsay, as Henry said, the new market manager. I just wanted to share some new information about the market and some things we have going on and some of the goals that I have for the market this year. The biggest goals are to legitimize our market as we grow. We're expanding, as some of you probably know. So ensuring that we have everything in place for our vendors and our customers, building community around the vendors and customers, and then supporting our farmers. Some updates for this year. We created a more formal application and rules. We have a new website that I'm still working on. We had our first vendor kickoff party where we discussed updates, chances for the vendors to network, and had representatives from various county and city departments there. That was a great event. We had a lot of vendors come. We've applied to have SNAP and WIC at the market. So this year at some point we will be accepting SNAP benefits. So that'll be a really great addition to bring in a new customer base as well. We're also going to be doing some data tracking through a service called Farm to Fact. Actually, it's a UW-Madison database. Customer counts, vendor sales slips, surveys, production data, and that'll help us understand how the farm market impacts the downtown economy and opportunities that we have for growth within that information. We're also going to have a nonprofit and community booth. So any organization that falls within the value of the farm market, they can bring their information and set up for free there to just get the word out about those organizations in our community. We're also seeking sponsors for the farm market. So that's something new that we're going to be doing this year as well. We have some really great activities going on. Our official opening day is June 1st. We'll be open from June through October from 9 to 2 on those Saturdays. We will have some vendors setting up this Saturday as well, being Memorial Day weekend. Our grand opening will be June 29th. Some great events planned for that, some music and activities. And then we have about 7 other activities on various Saturdays for our families in the community. That's all I have.
Thank you. Lindsay, do you have an email address and a phone number if people are interested that are listening?
Yes, I actually brought copies of the application and rules. So if someone wants that, that's got my number and stuff on there.
Okay.
Right on the back, there's a contact, so I don't know if I'm going to leave that somewhere.
Sure. Just, yeah, you can bring it up here.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
Right there.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Anybody have any questions? You have this. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. All right. Next up, we have public input. This is a non-agenda item. If there's anybody in the audience or council or staff that would like to speak on a non-agenda item, please give your name and address and limit your discussion to 3 minutes or less. Laurie.
I just want to thank the fire department for putting that nice memorial in respect of the worker that was killed in Appleton. I think it gave everybody a chance driving by to take a moment to think about how this happens and how all these units, whether it's police or fire or EMS, they're a true family and they support each other, and it goes all over. So it was really nice to come down Fulton Street and to see that on the corner there and to just have that moment. Everybody and respect.
Great. Thanks, Laurie. Any other public input? All right, let's move on to department head reports. Looks a little barren over there, Peg, but you're up.
Just a few things from the library. First of all, Patsy Servey and I participated in the Community Health Action Team program today, which was on connectedness, and our city was very well represented. I was very proud of the fact that our Park and Rec department, our police department, and the library are working on that connectedness and making sure that people have that ability to be connected to one another. There's some important studies done that have proven that being connected to other people is even more important than other health measures. So it counteracts some of the bad things that we may have in our lives when you're connected to others. Our summer library program registration is open, and it's open for all ages, including adults. And the importance of summer reading and summer learning is that those kids and the families that during the school year are really actively learning need to continue that through the summer. And so we provide activities and the idea that reading is important, and then for adults to model that reading behavior to their children is so important. And adults having that opportunity to make reading important in their lives. So stop by. We've got some pamphlets we can give you. There's lots of activities that'll be going on. Go to our website. You'll find that information there. Also, we have a planning team. Strategic plan for the library is taking place at this time with myself, Sue Abrahamson, Jean Boots, Holly Olson, and Tricia Duman from the school district. We're going to be working on a strategic plan for the library, which will be in conjunction with the strategic plan for the city. And I am going to be sending a survey link to city council members and department heads, and I hope that you'll take the few minutes to fill that out to help us as we get prepared to collect data about that. I also wanted to thank Henry Veliker for allowing the library to be a part of the strategic planning process that took place last week. I thought our consultant was interesting and kept us on track, and I was amazed at how much work we got done in the course of 2 days. Thank you very much for that. Also, our teen librarian is re-energizing a student advisory group, which we had in years past, but it had been allowed to graduate out. And there are about 15 kids that are going to be working with Taylor on what should be offered in the teen room. And it's really important for our youth to be included in leadership opportunities and to remember that their input is valued. So, those are some of the reasons why we do the things that we do at the library. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Peg. Any questions or comments for Peg? All right, let's move over to Justin, Public Works.
Thanks, Mayor. My update can be seen on page 48 and 49 of the packet. And as usual, starting on the wastewater side, we started disinfecting our effluent. That started on May 1st, and that is per our permit. It's where we add chlorine to immobilize any potential pathogens before it goes into the stream, and then dechlorinate so it does not affect the fish and other aquatic organisms. The algal group, which has been brought up here a couple of times in the past, has finished up at the foundry, is now set up at our treatment plant. We'll be testing a CO2 capture study there, as well as looking to see what other nutrients, such as phosphorus and nitrogen, we can remove from our waste stream, which we'd be concerned with as far as our permitting goes. So that's going to be starting here pretty soon. We should have that hopefully wrapped up in a couple months. We did meet with the DNR about our upcoming permit. The permit will be renewed this coming June/July. Looking at it, there are a few things that will change. No dramatic changes. Our permit will largely remain the same. We'll have some additional sampling that we'll need to take, which will increase our costs in the lab. However, we had some concerns, as many other plants do in the state, about phosphorus discharge limits. It looks like ours will remain the same for the immediate future, but that can change sometime moving forward. Streets, on the street side, we patched a bunch of potholes. We did a little extra work, which we'll be talking about a little bit later tonight. Spring banners are up. Brush and leaves are done. Evans Street has been clipping right along. We're making great progress. The weather has been fantastic. We're looking to be placing asphalt possibly by next week, so keep your hopes up. That doesn't mean as soon as the road goes black, it's open. We have other work to do and finish up. But we're fully expecting to be done before 4th of July, which has been the goal all along, to open it up and allow those people to enjoy the rest of their summer. We had Randy Borkert has announced his retirement. He's been working for the city for over 24 years, so come this July, he will be retired and moving on. We wish him the best, and we'll be looking to, again, hire in our street department. We've gotten young pretty fast in the last couple of years, but we thank the individuals who have worked so long, so hard for the city and have put in over 20 years before their retirement here, which is pretty much the goal here. We want to have long tenures for working with the city. Water side, we're going to have a presentation later tonight on wells 5 and 6, the wellhead and the whole recharge zone. That'll be at the very end of council. Once again, our consumer confidence report is available on the website or upon request. So please take a look at our water quality. I mentioned this at the last update. Just wanted to make sure, just to get the word out that it's out there, and people should look at this to see what our water quality is. Again, it is top notch, but it's just something that every citizen should take a look at and have an interest in. That pretty much wraps it up, Mayor.
All right. Thanks, Justin. Any questions, comments?
Did your crew do Schumacher Road this last month?
Yes.
Yeah, that turned out excellent.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, tell everyone nice work. That road really needed it by the elementary school. So.
Yes. Yep, you're welcome. We'll be talking about that a little bit later tonight, too.
Good.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Parks and Rec, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor,
Andrew
council members. What was that?
Andrew 1.
Andrew 1. Andrew 2 didn't make it apparently tonight, so makes it easier for me tonight. Just an update on some of the projects we've been working on this spring. Serenity Park, the boardwalk down behind the senior center is completed. There's one just minor modification to make here, and that will happen in the next week. But it does look really nice. It'll be there and available for people to use. I look forward to seeing some classes down there soon as well, so take a look at that. That project was about 3 weeks long, done by Wiscor, and they did a great job getting it done even with all the rain. I know they even put in some extra time later in the day and on some Saturdays to make up for that, and I appreciate that from them. I've talked in the past about the plastic edging that was around some of the playgrounds and deteriorating in our parks. We are going to move forward here soon. I guess we're on the list to get the concrete edging done around Rotary Riverview Park playground area. It's the same edging that we currently have at Swan Park and South Park. And as soon as they have good weather and they're in the area, they will do that. That is happening thanks to a donation from the Rotary Group, and I went and stopped by and thanked them last week for that as well. So we're working together with them to get that park edging done. We do have to do Riverside Park in the future as well. We'll get that taken care of. The big swim raft is here, put together. I did drive by today. It looked like Josh had gotten a bunch of the stuff on it. So everything will look very new and very updated down there at the beach this summer. And if you remember, the little dock got done as well. So those two things will be down there, and take a look once the water temperature gets above 40 degrees. The senior center, June 12th is going to be their 50th anniversary celebration open house. They're planning a lot of big things for the day, so stop on down. There'll be some food, there'll be some music, and just a really good time to come down and check out the senior center. They'll be giving tours and hopefully signing some new people up as well. So that's June 12th. For rec, baseball and softball has started. This is the second week for both that and men's softball. Things seem to be going well. Of course, we're always hoping that there is not a lot of rain during this time, but we'll just keep plugging along and moving forward. Cassandra's been out there working hard and making sure things are running smoothly for that. As far as the summer outlook, I like to talk about the tournaments that we have coming. In June, we have 3 weekends of youth tournaments. So the first one is girls softball, and then 2 boys baseball tournaments. They bring in, I think last year the one boys tournament brought in 40 teams from outside the area. So those are great things to have in our community and at Swan Park. This year also we'll have 2, there's a Waupaca softball group. They play modified fast pitch. They always have a tournament in August, and this year they're going to run a fundraising tournament the weekend after 4th of July, and they're going to try to bring in at least 16 teams, some from as far away as like Fond du Lac in Iowa. the state of Iowa. So they've got some teams interesting coming in, and so we're going to be bringing in some people, hopefully from the outside of our community, and having them stay here and hang out for the weekend. That will be right after the 4th of July, and I'll try to update people as we move forward on that, and we'll do whatever we can to help them make that be successful for our community as well. So nothing further.
Great, thanks. Andrew, any questions, comments? All right, Chief Ozell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My report can be found on page 31. The commission had their annual election of officers last meeting, and Brian Gildevan was elected as chairperson, and Jim Schultz was reelected as secretary. So those will be the individuals at the board this year. They also reviewed their code of ethics. And at our last meeting, we had the retirement of Jeff Johnson back in January, and we're going through our hiring process, and we've narrowed it down to 3 candidates that interviewed for a patrol position. We got 3 real good individuals. Captain Helgeson's going to be doing some background checks on these individuals, and we're hoping to have somebody on board at the police department either mid-June or at the end of June. So we're looking forward to that. Also, at the end of April, on April 27th, we had the Drug Take Back Day, and we brought in 59.5 pounds of prescription medication. Last year, when we held this event in the spring, we brought in 69.2 pounds. I'm hoping one of the good signs is that it's still a lot of weight, but with it being down a little bit, that people are getting rid of their prescription medication when they need to. So I'm hoping that's happening. I guess the other part of it is we've always been questioned as to what happens to those things. Those things, prescriptions are taken to the state crime lab, and they dispose of those for us. We recently had National Police Week last week. We had a luncheon at the police department on May 14th for the retired officers, the current officers and their families, and we had a number of awards that happened within the last year. We had 3 officers, Nicole Hahn, Brett Rodenz, and Matt Batt, that each had life-saving awards where they were called to a scene and they performed CPR and used the AEDs and saved the individuals from passing away. So those 3 officers were recognized with their families there. Also, we recognized Wes Zuby with an Exceptional Service Award. Wes has been a very important part of our organization. He talked about mental health and the stress and everything, the psychological, that he went through with the tragedy in his life. And he's shared that information, not just with the community here, with the students. I accompanied Wes also over to the Neenah Fire Department, where he spoke with the Neenah firemen and also some of the officers over there. And he's also been down to Platteville on 2 different occasions speaking at his old college in regards to that. And, you know, the topic is it's okay to say you're not okay. And Wes has just done an outstanding job. So he received an award for that. The last thing is I had talked about us putting in for a traffic safety grant, and that's where we were looking to get another speed board, some incident or scene barriers, and some lighted traffic vests for the officers. We did not get that grant, so we're just going to see if another one comes along, we'll put in for it again. So other than that, everything else is informational.
Anybody have any questions or comments for the chief? Thank you, Brian. Next up, we have Josh.
We've completed our transition to a new cell phone provider. We went from Cellcom to Verizon as they had more attractive pricing this time around. I'm meeting later this week with our phone system vendor and have been working with Spectrum to get things ready for the new phone system, and I'll learn more about that this week and timelines about that project shortly. Slowly getting into the process to start evaluating new copiers or multifunction printers, as they're known as. The 3 machines that we lease or rent all kind of end in a time frame from November to February next year. So we're going to get into that process, doing some upgrades and configuration changes on servers and the network in preparation of the new phone system and have some staffing changes in my department with some people leaving and trying to refill some of those positions both with community media and Waupaca Online.
All right. Josh, thanks. Any questions, comments for Josh? Henry, you're up.
Thanks, Mayor. My report begins on page 53. I kind of deviate from this because there's a few things I'd like to say that were really not addressed in the report. First, on your desk, the chamber did distribute a magazine with a nice article on Waupaca. It's really cool, free, and it's going to have some great wide distribution. So I want to make you aware of that. Sue Abrahamson and myself have been going around to the committees that have youths on boards and kind of just energizing, reintroducing a whole project that we've done now for probably 15, 16 years. We've met with the library board and the emergency management, emergency planning committee, and both committees gave us some really great input. We are meeting with the airport board tomorrow to talk about that. And then we'll have a couple more committees with Park and Rec and Historic Preservation. So that's moving along. Please mark your calendars for Tuesday, June 18th at 7:30 a.m. We're going to be inviting the City Council, the Convention and Visitors Boards members, as well as the town board members, to a presentation on the branding project. We're getting close to the finalizing that. Wanted to, bring the groups together and unveil that work. And then soon after, we'll get into the wayfinding piece of that, which is the, doing the directional signage and that kind of thing. And then I guess finally, two projects are moving forward. Wood renovators in our industrial park. If you remember, about a month or so ago, you approved a development agreement for that project, and Gold Cross as well is coming forward. Just as information, Gold Cross, while they're not going to have a building, right? They're going to be under construction. They're going to relocate their operation. They've worked something out with the Theta Care Waupaca campus, and they'll be operating out of the former River Hill Dental office. Apparently, over the wintertime, the docs and nursing staff stayed there, when inclement weather and things. So they're going to make provisions for the EMS crews to be able to bunk there and operate out of there. So thanks to the hospital for that. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, comments for Henry? All right, let's move on to unfinished business then. We have ordinance number 0419. This is an ordinance just changing the zoning. If you remember, the church on Badger Street is expanding and they need to rezone one of their parcels, and that's what this ordinance is doing. As far as I know, Henry, Sandy, we haven't heard any comments from the public. Okay, so this is the second reading, so we'd be looking to adopt this tonight.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Mayo, second by Keelan, that we approve of or adopt ordinance number 0419. This is an ordinance amending section 17.201, parent 2 of chapter 17 of the municipal code of the city of Waupaca, entitled Amendments to the District Maps. Any discussion? Since it's an ordinance, Sandy will call the roll.
Eric Olson,
Abstain.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
and Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
7 ayes, motion carried.
All right, and then let's move to new business. We have a request to move the seasonal farm market vendors from City Hall Square, where they currently have been, to the vacant lot Midtown Motors. Henry, this is your.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mayor. My memo is on page 117. For a long time, 25 years or more, the city's had a vending permit that allowed vendors selling agricultural produce to set up on East Fulton Street on the City Hall Square. With the new parking lot project and a new parking configuration, our vendor or vendors would take up a lot of those new stalls. There's some issues with vision, with the way it's set up. So in talking internally over the winter, through the DIRT meeting mainly, we talked about maybe moving the vendors to the Midtown Motors property now that we own it. And we think this is a nice move. It's a well-traveled street. Interested customers can, if they're in a vehicle, can pull their vehicle over, get off the street or park along perhaps Washington Street. There was one concern, the police chief, and we did speak with him about being able to get into that building because he's using it for evidence storage. And we would, if you approve this, would make sure the vendor would set up clearly outside of the way of those doors. This request is not only for Garmin Market, which is the one that you always see, but it could involve some other vendors. We did get a call from someone interested in getting the $75 permit to vend all season long. Again, Lindsay told you a little bit about the farm market. They typically charge $5 per day just for Saturday. And they might have upwards to 16 weekends that you can vend, but it's $5 every day. And I think they incentivize it by charging $75 for all weeks. But it is different than the Saturday market. This would just be for those vendors who want to vend during the week. We did ask Mr. Garman that we were a little concerned that he may pull traffic from the Saturday market. And he is agreeable to actually vending in both locations on Saturday, just to, you know, to work with the farm market that Lindsay's managing. And then finally, his last request is, if you approve this, if he could throw up some kind of advertising, Garmin Market coming soon, and put that and display that for a couple-week period before he starts vending. So the request before you is to move, you know, all our season-long vendors who we grant the $75 permit to, move them from the square to Midtown Motors. I don't know if you have any questions.
Henry, could they park in the insurance parking lot ever or not?
Well, you know, we own that building, of course, and like in our big festivals and things like that, they're not working Saturdays, so they allow that to occur. Again, the Saturday market, people they ask the vendors on Saturday to get out of off the square so the customers can park there. So people are probably parking on on Union Street. They could park at the rural insurance location as well. Just, you know, keep those stalls open for the Main Street businesses and the customers coming to the market.
Henry, when you said that you had discussions, I'm assuming that that would include the vendors themselves from years past? Were they consulted on the new location?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In fact, we're having conversations about where do we locate the market during Main Street construction. And Lindsay mentioned the preseason meeting, which was well attended. I've attended the postseason last year and this year's preseason. And we had a discussion about, well, maybe next year, 2020, of moving the market so people get used to it. So when it's 2021, they'll know where it is. They really nixed that idea. They really like being downtown, and they feel like when the when the street construction happens, that we'll get some advertising out. People will figure out where they're at. So we kind of taken their lead on it.
Okay, you've heard the request from Henry. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Chestnut, that we approve the request to move the seasonal farm market vendors from City Hall Square to the vacant lot at Midtown Motors, the old Midtown Motors parcel. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next up, we have a request by the Waupaca Community Arts Board for street closures and use of the bandstand and pavilion in Rotary Park for the 13th Annual Arts on the Square Artsipation Week and Community Arts Project. Probably should have skipped that part. Marcy, you're here.
Tongue twister.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. So you have this in your packet, and I was reading through it, trying to kind of be able to explain it better. It looks a little convoluted because the festival's large now, and we're also doing a community art project that requires street closure on top of it. So that's why it's a 2-page request. So I'm not sure if you guys were able to read it and make sense, or do you want me to kind of go through it? What would you like me to do?
Maybe you could explain how it's different this year than last year? 'Cause
Okay.
we can all picture what it looks like last year?
Okay, so last year we moved to North Main, and it was an overwhelming response that we stay on North Main for at least a couple of years. A lot of those requests came from the business owners, believe it or not. We did do a survey, monkey survey of all of the retailers, and people felt that their business improved from Arts on the Square, and they were really happy to have us down there. So we're planning to have it in the same location that we had it last year. So the first part of the request talks about closing North Main, like that block in front of the Danes Hall, for the main tent, which would be closed for Friday night and Saturday. The block in front of Main Street Marketplace would be only closed on Saturday, and that's where the artist vendors would be. I keep looking at Mary because I want to make sure I'm saying this right, because we spent a lot of time trying to figure this out. So, and then the third festival-related closure would be Session Street. We had Waupaca last year. We'd like to continue to make that a pop-up park. Silver Mist has volunteered to make it sort of a pop-up park atmosphere again, and we'd like to have some activities during the week. So we'd like to close that half a block of Session, just like we did last year. So it would go from Main to the alley. And so that would be closed for the entire week. So North Main would be closed for Friday and Saturday. Session would be closed all week, and then sort of North Main only on Saturday. Is that right? Okay, so that's the festival closure. Then the other thing is for the community art project, of course, we were never going to do Waupaca again, but we came up with another idea, and it's, I think we talked about it the last time I was here. It's called Murals at Your Feet, and so we're going to be painting 7 crosswalks throughout town. And we spent a lot of time with Justin and Roger figuring out the logistics on this. We don't want to do them all on one day because that would cause too many street closures, and we wouldn't be able to access anything downtown. So we sort of split them up, and we have 3 or 4 dates. So the first dates, we're going to do 2 of them in June, 3 in July, and then 2 in August. So the June ones would be June 2nd. They're almost all going to be on Sundays. And the reason we're doing them on Sundays is because the traffic is much lower on Sundays. We all know that. And that enables the street guys to power wash that crosswalk that we'll be painting for that Sunday and give us all of the blockades. And then on Sunday, we'll put the blockades up and we'll do the painting on Sunday, and it'll be ready to go by Monday. So we'll be doing 2 streets on June 2nd, Sunday, June 2nd, and that the 2 streets we're going to be doing then would be, oh boy, how do I explain this? Crossing Union Street at Main, going from like the library to Bank One, and then crossing Fulton Street at Main, going from the library to the old Office Outfitters. So those 2 streets would be the June closure. Then the July closure would be Cooper Street down by Rotary Park, There's going to be a crosswalk painting between the ramp and Rotary Park. The second one would be crossing Granite Street at Main, going to the Danes Hall from the pet store. And what's the third one, Mary?
Third one is crossing Union Street on the west
Oh, on the west side.
side of Main
Yeah.
Street.
So between Blue Angel and the antique store.
Right.
Okay, and then the August closures, we sort of said in our request to be determined, but what we've decided is that we don't want to close Main Street other than for the festival. So we will, the day that we close the North Main, that's when we'll do the one that crosses Main Street. So that one will be on a Friday. And then the other one will be crossing Session Street during that week, where we asked to close Session for the pop-up park. So those two streets will be closed anyway per our other request. So those won't be additional closures. But the June and the July, August would be additional street closures to the Arts Festival closures. Does everybody understand what we're talking about? It's clear as mud. Okay.
Well, most importantly, Roger and Justin understand it.
Yeah. They helped us so
They helped
much.
us figure out
We
the
had quite a
schedule,
couple
so.
meetings, and after this agenda item, we're going to talk about the memorandum. I think Justin's going to talk about that. So we have really clear understanding of our responsibilities and who's doing what and what we're responsible for versus what the city is. So that's pretty much our spiel. I did send Sandy a thing. I don't know if Josh was able to get it. Can I just show?
Yeah.
Oh, how do I do this up on the dealie?
Hit the power on the TV remote, just point it. Yeah. Yeah, point at the TVs and turn on.
That?
You're right,
Right.
Mary. As long as you keep Roger happy, I think we're okay.
Yeah, he was great to work with,
He's
by the
been
way.
awesome.
So this is our graphic representation of the 7 crosswalks. That is just beautiful. So we have 7 artists and 7 designs. And I wish I had a pointer. I could show you which street is which one. The one on the top with the keyboard is the one that's going to be down by Rotary Park, and that's sort of a double wide. That crosswalk actually can be wider than the rest of the city ones, and so that painting is quite a bit wider. The film one that you see, that's the one that's going between the antique store and Blue Angel, so it's leading to the theater, which we thought was kind of cool. The one to the right of that sort of quilty one, that's the one going to the Danes Hall. Then the one to the right of that, that's sort of a water representation. That's Dort de Wild, and that's the one that's going to cross. Uh-oh. Something happened.
There it is.
Okay. That's going across Main Street, sort of by Session Street, sort of in front of Fletcher's. So that's a water theme. Then the quilt that goes kind of through the middle of it, that's Rachel Hart. And that one is going to be between Bank 1 and, right? Yeah, between Bank 1. Yes, between Bank 1 and the library, crossing Union. The one directly below that with the circles, that one's going to be between the library and the old office outfitters. And then the last one way on the right with all the little designs is going to be the one that crosses Session Street. And that one is kind of a whimsical one. We'll have a lot of kids painting on that one. So the artists will be leading the teams. We're right now kind of recruiting team members. We're getting a lot of response on Facebook. People want to do this, and we think it's just going to be a lot of fun.
All right.
Any questions?
I have just one. So Justin and Roger did everything right. Did somebody notify the fire department? Got it. Oh, you just know now. Okay, thank you.
We will. And we will, if rain dates will be the following Sunday. The street closure will go off without a hitch because we've got a really good communication with Roger and Justin on this. The August ones, if it's raining, we'll do it after Arts on the Square.
Great. And Marcy, you didn't mention this, but you're also asking to use the pavilion or the bandstand down in Rotary Park,
Yep,
correct? Yeah.
on Saturday.
And that was the same as last year, too.
Right, we did that for the first time last year. We really wanted to use Rotary Park as well to try to start using it more, and it worked out pretty good, so we're requesting that again.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comment?
Make a
Leo?
motion to approve.
Motion by Martin,
Second.
second by Prochatsky, that the request by the community arts boards be approved. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried.
Thank you very much, you guys.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
And you guys let us know if you want to paint. Just send us an email.
You don't want me paid. That's for sure. All right, we have the memorandum of understanding between the city of Waupaca and the Arts Board. Justin, you're prepared?
Yes, so I'm taking over from here. Page 120 in your packet. So this follows what Marcy just detailed on these, on this crosswalk art. We're creating this memorandum of understanding because we did have several meetings. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page. As a city, as a street department, we need to make sure that this is done right. We have, the responsibility to maintain roads. We want to make sure everything's safe. So basically, this just outlines what our conversations were in the meetings. I'm just going to go through it fairly quickly. So basically, they came to us with the desire to create this artwork in the crosswalks, in the streets. They're agreeing to provide all the materials and the labor for the artwork and maintain all the aspects, basically, of the artwork. We had the schedule of closures, which Marcy went through already. We're going to provide the traffic control devices at the locations, and the arts group will be responsible for setup and takedown. Obviously, we will be there and we'll be watching and helping out when we can. We're going to clean the crosswalks. We're going to power wash the pavement, as Marcy has described, to make sure that they have hopefully, a clean surface as much as a roadway can be to paint on. The artwork at the mentioned crosswalks, Granite Street, Session Street, Main Street, East Fulton, both Union Street crosswalks are anticipated to be temporary, as you know, because Main Street construction project will wipe them out. So after Main Street, we're unsure at this point if we will continue on, but they will be there hopefully until then. The artwork on Cooper Street, which is the piano one up on top, is intended to be permanent, a permanent art fixture. If you go down the walkway in between the buildings on Main Street, you head down to Rotary Park, there is that walkway that goes over to the plaza. What is that? Is there a specific title at Rotary Plaza? Yeah. We have a crosswalk there with just bars. We're going to eliminate that or envision those piano keys to be the actual crosswalk. The rest of the mural will be basically that whole bump out area where the brick are and mirror that. So that one is intended to be permanent. It's roughly going to be a 20 by 40 area. And it's up to them to maintain that it stays in a piece of work or a piece of art, excuse me. We have a clause that either one of us can back out of it. And basically the arts group will pay for any work or any kind of work that is needed to remove the art or alter the art. Anything that is done by the city to maintain the artwork or the roadway as a cause of this artwork will basically be billed back to the arts group. We basically just want it to look good. And at any point it gets blighted or defaced or becomes a distraction to pedestrians or the vehicle traffic, then we would cooperate with the arts group. We'd hope they'd cooperate with us to come to a solution to, basically remedy the situation if we get that far. So basically the heart of this whole agreement is basically just to make our downtown a better place. Artful, beautiful, attract more people, and that's what we want to do. And we're willing to cooperate with the Arts Board to make this project a success for them and for us.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
So, Justin's asking that we agree to this MOU that's between the City of Waupaca and the Community Arts Board. So we would need a motion to approve this.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Peterson, that we approve of this agreement. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
Marcy, thanks.
It don't have to be tonight, does it?
It doesn't have to be tonight, but you can sign it if you want. Yep. All right, Justin, you're still up here.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Page 123 is my memo detailing some seal coating we want to get done on Apple Tree Lane. This is a project cooperating with the town of Waupaca. The following page, 124, is a graphic that was created that shows the responsibility of the roadway between the city of Waupaca, which is highlighted in yellow, and the town of Waupaca, which is highlighted in orange. And basically, what we believe, you know, if we combine, work together, we can get more efficient prices for both jurisdictions, both entities. Roger Hansen took the lead on this, received 3 proposals. Waupaca County, Scott Construction, and Farner Asphalt Sealers. The cost is on a table on the memo, and you can see that Waupaca County Highway Department was the lowest of the 3. The town of Waupaca has already met and approved their share of the project. So what I'm looking for is approval from you for our share of the project, which would be $16,500. Again, just for the remaining seal coating on Apple Tree Lane. We budgeted $25,000 for this project in our capital funds, so that's where the money would be coming from.
All right, and we're talking about both Apple Tree Lane and Farm Drive though, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
should have clarified that.
The whole thing that's in yellow.
Yes.
Okay, so we need a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Fair, second by Chestnut, that the council enter into a contract with the Waupaca County Highway Department for seal coating for Apple Tree Lane and Farm Drive in an amount not to exceed $16,500. Any discussion? Sandy, will call the roll.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Lori Chestnut,
Aye.
and Eric Olson.
Aye.
8 ayes, motion carried.
Still going.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Next one is on page 130 of the packet. This is some asphalt patching that we have already had completed in the city. As you know, we had a number of potholes pop up this last spring. Very rough spring, a lot of snow, a lot of freeze thaw. We were out there cold patching, they just kept reopening. So as a result, basically Roger again worked with the county to see what we could do to make more of a permanent improvement. And we got basically a proposal or invoice to pave these bad spots. So what we identified can be seen on sheet 133, basically Went Drive, Churchill Street, Schumacher, South Washington, West Union, Smith Street, Fulton Street, and Harrison, also known as Highway 49. So all the nasty bad spots that we all know are the potholes are there. Basically, we just decided we're going to get this done, and because the roads needed it, and that's our job, is to fix the roads. What I'm looking to do now is, right now, if we left it, we'd pay for it out of our operations and maintenance budget, which is fine. We're fine with that. but what would happen is we'd have less money to do seal coating, or excuse me, crack sealing on the rest of our roads, which we spend usually about $20,000 to $25,000 each given year just on crack sealing the roads throughout the city. So instead of the funds getting taken from our operations and maintenance budget, I'd like to take the funds from our capital borrow, which again, we budgeted $680,000 for the Evans Street project. We only needed $613,000. We then allocated $12,500 for the county highway facility study, which leaves us a balance of just over $54,000 of remaining borrowed funds that we could utilize for this work. So basically, again, all I'm looking for is just to change the funding source from our O&M budget to this capital borrow, just to pay for this contract with the Waupaca County Highway in amount not to exceed $23,108.
Okay, you heard Justin's request. We would need a motion to approve this, if you would like.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Chestnut, that the council enter into agreement with the Waupaca County Highway Department for citywide asphalt patching repairs in an amount not to exceed $23,108, and we use our capital improvement fund to fund this. Okay?
A question would be, Evans Street isn't done yet, so are you pretty sure you're locked in at the 613?
Yes, feel pretty confident about that.
I have a question. By making these repairs, would that reduce some of the crack sealing that you would otherwise need to do, at least in these areas?
Yes, it will. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone by doing this. These areas are to the point where they're so far gone where you're just chasing crack after crack after crack. But we do still try to get those. Basically, if there's a crack in the road, you try to seal it. It still will grow the next year, but only by this much. If you don't seal it, then it'll grow by like this much. So to answer your question, yeah, it helps.
I don't think you ever run out of cracks to seal, though, do you? I wouldn't think so. Any other discussion? Sandy will call the roll.
Alan Keeland,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Mary Fair,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
and Lori Chestnut.
Aye.
8 ayes, motion carried.
Right, thank you, Justin. Let's move on then. We have a request from the Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce for their Strawberry Fest and for their 4th of July celebration to close some streets. And I see Mitch is here with some help.
Yeah,
course.
I got my
Mitch,
right
go ahead.
hand gal coloring back there, so we just got back from a soccer game, but so. Mayor Smith and council, I'm here representing the Waupaca Area Convention and Visitor Bureau to request street closures for Strawberry Fest, Friday and Saturday, June 14th and 15th, and 4th of July celebration Thursday, July 4th. We would be utilizing the Waupaca City Square grounds, Rotary Riverview Park, and surrounding streets. We will provide a certificate of insurance to the city from Johnson Insurance Agency. And so for Strawberry Fest, the block of Main Street from Fulton Street to Granite Street and the east northbound lane of Main Street between Union and Fulton and Cooper Street at Main Street is needed Saturday. The block of East Fulton Street from Main Street to Jefferson Street and the city library parking lot, or at least part of it, will be needed Friday through Saturday. And then also for the 4th of July, celebration parade at 10 a.m. On July 4. Assistance is requested from the Waupaca Police, Fire, and Street Departments for parade route closure. The parade route will begin on Mill Street at Elm/North Division Street and run south on Main Street, ending at Lake Street. We would like permission to also close Lakeside Parkway from High Street intersection to Waupaca Recycling Center that evening for the fireworks display over Shadow Lake. And the road will be closed to pedestrian traffic to leave a clear path for emergency vehicles, and we will work with the Sheriff's Department for reserve deputies to patrol that area. And also, we've met with Justin and his team on logistics for Strawberry Fest and tent setups and such. So,
All right, no different than years past. Okay.
yeah.
Well, last year was.
Well, it's slightly different because the parking lot is different. So I guess we haven't fully determined how much of the parking lot they would need. At this point, I guess I haven't seen a map, but we have informed Chamber that they should consider the access from the bank during Friday and Saturday, or out from their drive-through. So I don't know. I guess I don't know if the entire parking lot back here is needed or partial or part of it. Guess is,
So you're gonna work with the chamber to
to
make sure
figure
that
that
they
out.
still have access.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Anybody have any other questions? Make a motion?
Move
Anybody?
to approve.
Second.
Motion by Chestnut, second by Keelan. These two are working overtime tonight. You guys. To approve the request by the Waupaca Area Chamber of Commerce for Strawberry Fest and 4th of July. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Mitch, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, Justin, you're back on again. We have,
Yeah, we have our presentation. All right.
everybody.
Well, thank you, everyone. This has been a long time coming. Here with me right now is Stephanie DeVires with, remind me again, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin Geological Natural History Survey.
Thank you. UW Extension. Also in the back, the two gentlemen are with the Wisconsin DNR. We got Bruce Reinecke and Brian Austin. And then we're also graced by the Waupaca County Conservationist, Brian Haas. So I'm just going to turn it over to Stephanie and get out of the way.
So I just wanted to summarize. I'm actually a one-year postdoctoral research fellow. I was brought in with the Wisconsin Water Resources Institute to assist in this project with the in conjunction with the Wisconsin Geological Survey and the DNR in looking at the nitrate concentrations going into the municipal wells for Waupaca outside of town. So these are wells number 5 and 6. So I'm here today just to kind of give a summary on the work that I've done and some of the general thoughts that I'm going to leave out there as I head off to the next adventure. The project location, so it's here in your lovely city, Waupaca, where I might add I've spent a lot of time, in particular last summer, and really enjoyed it here. So you have 7, possibly 8 now, municipal wells, and they're all drilled into this superficial sand gravel aquifer. And in particular, you have wells 5 and 6 located south of town in the town of Lind. This is off of Crystal Lake Road and County Highway E. And I don't know if this works a little bit. Anyway, they're in there, these little triangles. And historically, these have been providing 50 to 60% of the total municipal supply. So for this reason, the patterns in nitrate concentration have been slightly concerning. The current federal limit for nitrate in drinking water is 10 parts per million nitrate as nitrogen. Historically, these two wells have kind of bounced around somewhere between 5 and 6 ppm, which is well within that limit. But more recently, we've seen an upward trend, particularly in well number 5, which is approaching the mid 9s on average. I think the most recent data I saw had a 9.8, which puts it very close to coming over that federal limit. in the near field, by near field, I should explain, I mean in the area most likely to be contributing groundwater recharge to these wells, the most likely sources of excess nitrogen will include anything from irrigated agricultural activities. There's pastures in the area, and there's also a lot of residential septic in that area. So what I was brought on to do is to use computer modeling to try to construct a three-dimensional grid model of this region and simulate groundwater flow in and around the wells and simulate pumping and try to understand try to identify the so-called capture zone for each of the wells. And capture zone is essentially the land area where infiltrating rainfall will trickle down through the soil and eventually recharge to the aquifer and then start traveling through groundwater and eventually discharge to the well. So there's an area that we can outline that can be defined as the capture zone for any given well. Then I wanted to, once I accomplished that, the goal was to try to see if we could predict the concentration of nitrate from this model, like in a reasonable way. And then use that to understand why nitrate is higher in well 5 than well 6, in particular because these are so close to each other. And then other reasons that the concentrations might be increasing over time in the last few years. And then look for any potential water land management strategies that we could employ to try to reduce the nitrate in the well discharge so we can keep these online for municipal purposes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the model itself. It goes into a lot of technical points, but if anyone's interested, you're welcome to ask me later. But I did want to mention just the general hydrogeology of the modeled area. So you can see in the very center here is where the two wells are located. This doesn't show up very well on there, but they're off of County Highway E and Crystal Road. And then these are bound by Crystal River. You have Walla Walla Creek in the south, which connects with Jensen and Spencer Lakes. And these form very strong hydrogeologic boundaries. The aquifer itself is sand and gravel, mostly unconsolidated glacial deposits that include clay, sand, silt, gravel, and till. And these are underlain predominantly by Precambrian granite. There is a little bit of sandstone in the vicinity of Little Hope, but mostly this is red granite. The average aquifer thickness is around 146 feet, and the thickness, the saturated thickness, in other words, from bottom to top, how much of it is saturated with water, is about 135 feet on average. There are areas where this is a little bit thinner, and there are areas where it's thicker. So under those drumlins, for example, it can be upwards of 200 feet, and under the creek beds, a little bit shallower. The model itself covers an area of 26 3/4 miles squared. I broke it down into a grid of 100 foot by 100 foot units, so on the XY scale. And then it is comprised of 3 different layers, which are designed to sort of represent the stratigraphy to some degree, where I have a deep layer that's about 50 foot thick, a middle layer that's 25 foot thick. So that captures most of the thickness of the aquifer, especially in the thinnest areas. And then I allow the top layer to just sort of drape on top of that. So it's naturally thicker where we have drumlins and till, and it's naturally thinner over river channels and the like. I have the wells in my model are screened in 3 different layers, and then I have water coming into and exiting the perimeters of this, were determined using like a preliminary model called a G-flow. And so it sort of just pumps water in and extracts water from the perimeter according to that. And then I added things like local rainfall data, and local geology and other aquifer properties in order to then simulate groundwater flow through this. This is calibrated then to a number of different points. Many of you have ever driven out there, you've probably seen some of the monitoring wells along the highway there. So those are my friends. We have a bunch of what's called level loggers in there, which are little instruments that are deployed and continuously read the water levels. And I can go out and pull those and plug them into the computer, and it gives me the history, I think, in 15-minute increments. So I have very precise measurements in those locations, as well as 4 new water table wells that I installed last November that are closer to that, a little bit north and then a little farther south. And then to complement these, I also have measurements taken during when wells were constructed throughout the area, some of them going back about 15 years or so. So using these well construction reports, then when they fill in these reports, they include the static water depth, and then I can use that as sort of like a broader pattern of water table behavior, and so to calibrate my model once I get it running. Overall, this is the results of the model itself, where you see on the right side of the panel, this is what the groundwater flow looks like. So you see from the northwest corner, water is flowing from west to east towards Crystal River. From the southwest corner, water is flowing sort of from the southwest kind of to northeast. It's sort of bound by those two rivers. And then as you approach those two wells, it starts to shift, so you have predominantly a west to eastward flow bound on the north and south by those two rivers. There's a little bit of uncertainty in like sort of that turning point there, which is captured pretty well in historical water table maps also. The calibration, though, you see on the left, I have a dashed line. That's the ideal point. So if I had a perfectly calibrated model, all of those points would plot directly on that dashed line, and they hug it pretty nicely. And overall, the error, I think, was somewhere around 0.4 feet, plus or minus. So we're pretty happy with that. So what I did with this model then is I can apply particles anywhere in the model, and I can run it and allow them to move forward with time, which then allows me to see from which locations a particle that started on the land surface will eventually end up in the well. And so I use that to answer the first question of this project, which is what is the capture zone for each well? So the diagram that I have up here, this represents a few things. First is the capture zones, which are in dark black lines. And then I have identified 4 different parcels in this area, which are likely contributors to like elevated nitrogen due to the land activity. So what you see is like there's sort of like a set of nested capture zones where in the green parcel there, I call that parcel 2, there's an irrigation well at the very top of that pumps pretty strong, and it has its own little capture zone that it creates a sort of interference which is then wrapped around by the capture zone for well 6, and then the larger surrounding one is well 5, and these tail off towards the south to the southwest, which is like coming from the direction of flow. So that's my capture zones. The next question was, what can we do with this? So I performed what I call a capture zone analysis, where I took these and I subdivided them into different areas to determine what fraction of each capture zone is coming from like uncultivated or areas, and which parts are coming from the 4 distinct parcels that I'd highlighted there. And then I was able to then build sort of a spreadsheet to then apply different concentrations of nitrate to the leachate coming off of these different land parcels, and add it up together to determine what the concentration should be at the well on any given day. The concentrations that I chose to use were based on the monitoring well data that I had. From parcels 1 to 3, nearby monitoring wells suggest that averages around 20 parts per million. And then in uncultivated areas, I had 2 monitoring wells, which suggested somewhere between 2 and 3 parts per million, but I had supplemental data coming from some colleagues up at UW Stevens Point that showed in the far field area, sort of where that tail is that you see, some higher concentrations in residential wells that are closer to 7 or 8. So I averaged these out to 4. And then in some situations, I applied 2 parts per million from Crystal River. And then I also used a tool to remove nitrogen wherever irrigation was extracted, and then reapply it. So can the concentration of nitrate be estimated from a model? So these 2 plots show how well or not well my model simulated these concentrations. On the top, you see well number 5. The solid line is the observed maximum for each year from 2012 to 2018, and the dashed line is what I estimated using my model. And they seem to be like off by a lag year, but generally speaking, the trend is comparable, and I feel pretty good about that. And it has us ending up at about 9.8 ppm in 2018. In well number 6, I have 3 lines here. The solid line is the observed. The dashed line is the initial, or is the final modeled value. But then the gray line above that is the value that I calculated if I didn't give credit back for water that was removed by that irrigation well that kind of creates a shadow zone to that well. So what that indicates to me is that, like, by having a high capacity irrigation well there, it's actually serving as a little bit of a protection for well number 6 by constantly recycling some otherwise relatively high concentration nitrogen-rich water. So that leads to some of the next questions. Why is the concentration of nitrate higher in well 5 than it is in well 6? Well, that comes down to like looking at the capture zones themselves. In well number 5, 38% of the entire recharge area is highly cultivated land, and it's only 35% of the well number 5, and that makes a difference. Other reasons that there's also parcel number 4 is a manure lagoon that you have to zoom in, and it's pretty small, but this is kind of acts as like a little bit of an injection point where you have a continuous supply of high nitrate water that's constantly being captured by that well. I did put that in. I put that into my model as 200 ppm continuously. It's not a huge contributor, but it adds about 0.3 parts per million that wouldn't otherwise be measured in that well. So then what possible reasons might nitrate be increasing? If you look at the monitoring well data, you'll see that there's not really a pattern of increasing nitrates coming off of these fields, so you wouldn't necessarily expect the well water itself to be higher in nitrate over time. And when I looked at this historically, it did catch my eye, and you've mentioned tonight that, we were talking to somebody a little bit earlier, in 2012, you were pumping almost the equivalent over the year, an average of 204,000 cubic feet per day from these 2 wells. Last year, you only pumped 92,000 cubic feet per day on average, so like less than half. And a lot of that, I understand, is the foundry no longer is demanding, has reduced their demand for water. And what that does, though, is it actually shrinks the size of the capture zone. So I ran the model like under 2 scenarios, or actually did an entire historical scenario using the various pumping, like volume extractions reported from 2012 to present. And as you increase the pumping, then like the capture zone, in particular for well 5, starts to expand and eventually gets to the point where there's insufficient recharge from the local area to extract. So it actually starts pulling water across the Crystal River. And so we're actually getting discharge from Crystal River that is going to get brought through the banks. And so that's going to have the impact of diluting like any solutes that happen to be in the water by the time it gets to the well. So that is a hypothesis that I've developed, is that part of the reason we're seeing this increase has to do with the fact that you've simply reduced pumping. And so now a higher fraction of your capture zone is encompassed by like high nitrogen loading land uses. So then the question is there any potential water or land management change that strategy we can employ to try to reduce nitrate in well discharge? And briefly, I looked at a couple of different scenarios for today. There's still directions I can take this, but the first plot I put up here is that we assume that your future use rate for these 2 wells is combined 100,000 cubic feet per day over the course of a year. Then if we vary the fraction that's being pumped from well 5 versus well 6, so I started at like 60,000 of that was well 5, 40,000 was well 6, and I went to 80-20. to see how that would play out in my model in terms of concentrations. And it actually helped well 6 a little bit, but it had no negligible impact on the probable water quality at well number 5, which is the one that's of greater concern at the moment. So I don't know that that's a great strategy. But then if I go back and I simply take number 6 offline, and I take the entire volume of water, in fact, if I increase it to double, then like I'll see like the capture zone itself doesn't change. Now I'm just now bringing in more water from other areas, and it's increasing blending essentially at the well screen, which allows you to see in the raw water supply a lower concentration overall. If we were to like make land usage changes, so for example, let's say any one of these parcels just got converted to grassland or like non-agricultural use, and we saw like a background, like a large reduction in the overall annual nitrogen loading from these. I tested that from parcels 1, 2, and 3. So I color-coded these on the little graph so that they're the same color. You see that parcel number 3, which is the one in the upper right corner, there's negligible impact there. The green parcel, parcel 2, over there you start to see a slight improvement, but it takes 15 years before that improvement comes into play. And that has to do with the timeline of this. Like I have an image, I'm not presenting it here, where I have this broken down into the fraction of these from which it takes 1 year for the water to arrive, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, and so on. And so most of the water arriving from parcel 2 at well 5 takes 10 years or more. And then finally, if we were to make those changes in parcel 1, you would start to see an improvement immediately and like look at probably a steady state concentration of less than 6 ppm overall. It might be hard to see this. We got into I put this in part as a discussion point because there was some discussion about whether or not there was a way to reduce the rate of pumping that would like reduce the immediate reach. Like in other words, like if we had, for example, that manure lagoon, I said it contributes a little bit of excess nitrogen, but it's probably not the main source. But is there a way that we can reduce the pumping rate that would not capture that, for example, and allow that water just flow over the well screen? And the answer to that is no. And what these two images sort of represent is like they're a cross section where I have like I'm moving from, if you look on the blue figures from left to right, is moving from that manure pond across the well and then to the next, like to about 60 feet in the other direction. And so I've applied water heights that correspond to the modeled values at 1,500 gallons per minute and 250 gallons per minute, and then tracked particles starting at that pond and towards the well to see where they go, and they all end up in the well. It's because you create a vertical gradient that's simply too strong. There's not enough of a difference in the flow, like on the other side, in order for water to actually flow past that screen, unless you were to leave the well turned off for a significant period of time. And I think that's sort of where I wrapped up. Some broad conclusions then that I can say is higher pumping rates at well 5 draw in more water from remote recharge areas that have lower nitrogen loading. So the irrigation wells may offer some protection from further increases. And actually, this is a point, I have not modeled this here. However, I did notice that parcel number 2 they have a new irrigation well in place. It did pump a little bit last year. It was relatively low, but I noticed on the way out today that they have 3 brand new pivots in place, which I suspect means that pumping will increase significantly, which may actually play out in favor of lower nitrate at well 5, because that's going to pull a lot of that enriched nitrogen water out and recycle it. Some of it will trickle its way back in, but not all. And that could have a pretty good impact on water quality over time, depending on the volume that's actually being pumped there. So that remains to be seen. And looking at my timelines, if you change nothing else, if that has an impact, I would forecast that you would see that impact by the end of next year. It's within the 3-year zone. Otherwise, like targeted land acquisitions may offer probably the most permanent solutions to trying to bring down and or maintain nitrate levels in these 2 wells. And I think that's where I wrapped up. Just need to give a few acknowledgments and thanks to all the folks that have helped me out here. I have some folks at UW-Madison, Dr. Mike Cardiff at the survey, Ken Bradbury, the state geologist, Elmo Rawlings, he's one of the geologists there too, Dave Hart, Brian Austin, and Bruce with the Reineck with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, and also special thanks to Justin here in Waupaca, who's been gracious and helped me out with some of the fieldwork aspects and getting me oriented when I first started this project last summer. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Absolutely. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood you right. That you modeled 80% of the water coming from, say, well 6 versus 20% from 5, and it was actually worse. Am I stating that correctly?
If I took the current year model, now just to be clear, like the final model will change depending on annually as a result, or the behavior of the model will change if I change recharge, for example, which is precipitation changes every year. But based on the existing model and what it was in 2018, yeah, the way this works is the bottom scale starting at 60,000 going up to 80,000 is the pumping rate for well number 5, and the difference between that and 100,000 is well 6. So I have 60-40 to 80-20. And so, yes, when it actually got a little bit worse going up to 80,000. There appears to be a threshold when I was running through various simulations that, like, up until you start pumping well number 5 at around 95,000 cubic feet per day, that seems to be the tipping point at which it starts to draw in water, like, a little bit more from the northwest and from Crystal River potentially. That seems to be like the real tipping point.
Do we have excess capacity in well 6 to increase our production? I wonder what would happen if we stopped using well 5 and instead increased production at 6.
I wondered that as well. Like historically, it looks like you've never, like well 6 has never pumped above about 42,000 cubic feet per day average. It's my understanding that that the city has plenty of water, and it's potentially it's okay to take one or both of these offline, in which case whatever that capacity alone will probably continue to meet the city of Waupaca's needs.
So that might be an option that would meet our goals, is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah, you could simply taking one of the wells offline would also be an option.
And if we were to take one of them, I would assume 5 would be better to take off than 6.
Probably.
Okay.
Yes, at least for the short term.
How much can you expect nitrates to fluctuate in a year's time? I mean, your testing was done throughout the year, or?
So I have a historical record, from these monitoring wells, and there's a couple years where the concentrations are much lower from these monitoring wells. And the ones I picked, by the way, are specific because I would consider them edge of field. In other words, based on the direction of groundwater flow and where these wells are located, it pretty well captures recharge coming directly from one of these parcels. Overall, going back to the oldest data I have, it seems to hover in the upper teens or low 20s, throughout the course of the year. There, with the exception of in the 2012, 2013 years, it was very low, and that's in part probably because there was a severe drought, and so you just simply didn't have much recharge making its way to the water table in those couple of years. And so then you see kind of a resurgence the next year, because when you start having water move through again, it brings it all down. Then any residual nitrogen is coming down kind of in one big pulse the following year. But overall, it's been pretty consistent off of these 2 plots, that sort of upper teens to 20s.
I was kind of waiting for you to tell us that, that there was one place out there that maybe was attributing mostly to our nitrate issue, but that's really not true.
I don't think that's true, no.
Okay,
I wouldn't testify to that.
okay.
Well, but, so you're saying that parcel 1 isn't necessarily the largest culprit?
Oh, parcel 1 is the largest culprit, but yeah, I think, yeah. But at the same time, it's not the concentrations that are being measured. It's not. I would say that it's not being managed poorly. For example, it's simply the proximity and the rate of pumping it's a joint contribution that's leading to relatively high values in this area. Yeah, arguably that is the largest contributor. But I guess I wouldn't say I'd point a finger in the sense that I don't think the land is being managed particularly badly, and that you're seeing excessive concentrations coming off that property.
So if they were to change crops or something where they didn't have to put down any nitrates, that wouldn't make a huge difference?
It might make a difference. I'm assuming, and I'm assuming that there's some manure spreading that occurs on that property, and yeah, if that's going to have an impact, in particular, like the timing of the spreading. So if that spreading is happening, for example, in the late fall, when it's still relatively warm, you're going to end up with a lot of stored nitrogen in the soil that come spring melt is going to leach out pretty quickly. So there's a timing factor there, but there's no, I don't know how much is being spread. In terms of the crops, it looks to me like, I know last year was predominantly alfalfa. I would say growing potatoes on that property would be a very bad idea, for example, because potatoes tend to be very high loss nitrogen, and probably row crops such as corn are less desirable.
And when you list land acquisition as being one viable strategy, were you referring to purchasing a parcel 1?
Actually, I was referring to parcel 2 specifically in that. And that one, yeah, I looked it up. It looks like based on about $6,000 an acre price, that would be about $100,000 to purchase that entire property. It would be slightly more for parcel 1, probably closer to $150,000. It's a little bit more coverage there. But yeah, as a long-term permanent solution, if those properties were ever to come available, or the land leases, for example, were available, that would be a great way to restore water quality very quickly, and you would see the impacts within 3 years.
Are you familiar with extraterritorial jurisdiction?
No.
My understanding is the city has extraterritorial jurisdiction for a area surrounding its municipal boundaries by, I have to look it up, I think it's 2 miles.
I think we were discussing this earlier, and there was some question mark about that particular plot of land, and because it's not part of because it's sort of separate from the larger municipal boundaries. I'm not entirely certain, though. That goes beyond my area of expertise.
It occurs to me that if we increased our flow, that we would lessen our nitrates, and it goes back to that idea of providing water to other towns and municipalities.
Well, it looks like well 6 would improve if we pumped more, but well 5 was pretty much the same.
Well 5 would improve if you just stopped pumping well 6, like if you pumped it by itself. And one question that remains, this is a steady state model that I did. One question that remains is if I set it up transiently, so I change the pumping rates over time, there might be a way to modify the usage such that you can benefit from both, but I haven't explored that avenue yet.
I have a question about the land acquisition. So I'm confused because it sounds like you would recommend that as the best long-term solution.
If I were to, if you could do any of these things immediately and all pieces aligned for it to happen, yeah, that would be the best solution.
Because then it would be idle land. It would sit
Yes, because then you could choose to, whether it be turned into recreational or simply grassland,
Right.
some sort of surface land activity that isn't associated with high nitrogen loading to the groundwater. So no fertilization, no manure spreading, no large septic systems, nothing like
Right.
that.
Okay.
Justin, if we go past this federal guideline threshold, are we required to shut wells down at a certain point, or is there a treatment we gotta initiate at a certain point?
How the process works, we do quarterly compliance samples through the water department. We send those samples in. When we get a sample that's above 10, we have to take a second sample to verify if it's that much or not. If the second sample comes back above 10, they will order us to shut down whichever well it is. And then it'll just kind of be a process of remediation or just come up with a game plan of what's the long-term fix. So, yeah, there's options out there on ways to clean it up. Sometimes it just takes time, as you saw from the presentation here. May just take it off for a while. Land changes,
I know your
use changes.
predecessor, John, said once upon a time there was a thought of maybe putting another well up in the Swan Park area. I don't know, if that was a viable solution, if we had to shut one of these down and needed it, we'd have to drill another well, or can we get along with less wells?
Yeah, so while this work's been going on the side, we did a study within the water department to see what our wells can handle, what the city requires every year. The study showed that we have plenty enough capacity that we can run without 5 and or 6 at the same time for quite some time. So I mean, as far as being able to pump water out of the ground and provide to our city, we have the capacity there. So shutting down one of these wells is not a huge concern, other than it's a major financial asset to us. We prefer not to drill a brand new well just because we had to. So yes, at one point, well 8 was on the capital plan near Swan Park. We've taken that off because there's no need. Usage has gone down with many of our major industries using recycled lines. So.
Can you turn a well off and then turn it back on?
Yes.
Like in 2 years? Or is there does it go dry? Or it doesn't go dry, but have we lost our ability to access the water by having?
No, we could. I've never been through that process. I've never heard of anybody else doing it. I would imagine we'd have to exercise the motors just to make sure that everything's running, but we would not be able to put the water into the distribution system if we were ordered by the DNR to shut it, have it shut off. So we'd have to think of a way to pump the water without putting it into the drinking water supply.
Okay.
Is there a treatment for taking nitrates out at the wellhead or not?
Yes. Yes. Just like, it's similar like a reverse osmosis system.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I learned more in 30 minutes than I did in a whole year of class. Thank you.
That makes 2 of us.
All right, anything else? Thank you for coming, we appreciate it. It was very helpful. Yeah. All right, we're actually at the end of our council meeting tonight, so don't forget we have a council meeting on June 4th. So we need a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion by Keelan.
Second.
Second by Mayo that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion carried. We're adjourned at 7:45 p.m. Have a safe ride home, everybody. Have a great day.